Desperate broadcast begged for mercy. Ancient leaders who remembered fragments of the original war offered anything, planets, armies, their own blood just to make it stop. But the humans weren't interested in negotiation. They had learned something far worse than how to survive war. They had learned how to survive guilt. The truth began emerging from buried archives and corrupted files. Humanity hadn't been defeated in some ancient war. They had been the last species to evolve, the last to reach the stars, and when they finally did, the galaxy had already decided they didn't belong. Human ambassadors were murdered in open council. Their colonies were sanctioned and destroyed. Their children were sterilized by accidental viral drifts. The message was clear: stay in your corner or vanish entirely. But humans don't break easily. They built faster than light ships without shared technology. They created weapons that burned in silence and bodies that could survive in any environment. They didn't become monsters. They became proof that the galaxy's hierarchy was built on fear and timing. Humanity wasn't inferior. They were just late to the game. What followed wasn't war, but systematic erasure. 25 species met in secret and signed the Covenant of Stillness. They couldn't kill humanity outright, too resilient, too adaptable. Instead, they offered peace. They gave humans one planet, one sector, one chance to heal in a construct called the Cradle. And humanity, still believing in coexistence, accepted. While they slept in the cradle, the rest of the galaxy erased them, not with bombs, but with bureaucracy. Books vanished, records corrupted, monuments crumbled. Children were taught that humans were myths used to keep colonies obedient. But the cradle wasn't cryosleep. The humans had chosen to lock themselves away because they knew the betrayal was coming. They prepared not to fight back immediately, but to wait for the right moment when someone's arrogance would crack open the door. They didn't understand. Now they were awake, and they weren't here for conquest. They were here for truth. The awakened humans didn't destroy monuments, they rewrote them. Ancient victory arches suddenly bore plaques reading, "Massacre of the Innocent" instead of "Victory over Terran Incursion." Museum exhibits changed overnight, showing the real history of genocide and erasure. And somehow, everyone believed the new version, even those who had written the original lies. The humans injected memory viruses into cultural nerve centers, libraries, and schools. 27 species began fracturing internally as civil wars erupted and rulers were assassinated by their own people. Furious to learn their gods had been carved from genocide. It wasn't terror. It was clarity. And clarity was far worse than any weapon. The galactic database containing the genetic histories of 6,000 species was quietly corrected. One line of code changed humans from Category 9 primate anomaly to Category 0, original blueprint. Suddenly, every species' ancestry traced back to humanity, and it broke them. Commanders who had led extermination campaigns dug their own graves beside the soldiers they had sent to die. Temples burned as believers learned their faiths were built on lies. Children cried in their sleep from dreams of faces they'd never been told about before. But the humans' greatest mercy was restraint. They could have burned everything. Instead, they burned only the lies and left the living to choke on what remained. In the heart of the cradle, the human called Prime, once Commander Rhett Andros, stood with the frequency, the woman whose song could reshape matter itself. One chamber remained sealed, containing the core, humans modified beyond recognition, souls restructured by science and war. Even the cradle feared waking them to early. Across 10,000 systems, civilizations had stopped. Warships sat dead in orbit. Economies collapsed from shame rather than strikes. Children stopped playing soldier and started asking why their ancestors had lied about the humans, why they had erased them, and most troubling of all, why the humans hadn't erased them back. That was the question no one could answer. Because the humans could have destroyed everything, but chose not to. In a final broadcast, Prime spoke like a man who had waited too long to say something simple. You call us monsters, and built peace with our extinction. Now you want to negotiate, but you don't negotiate with a grave. The message was clear. The humans weren't here to rule or return or rebuild what had been destroyed. They had given the galaxy truth, more than had ever been given to them. Now there was a choice to make. Prime looked at his people, billions bearing different scars, and made the decision that would echo through history. We leave. They had given the galaxy the truth. That was all they'd ever wanted. The difference was they didn't need the galaxy to love them. They just made sure it would never forget them again. The cradle began to fold inward, not collapsing, but departing. It didn't vanish through hyperspace or leave any trail. It simply ceased to be part of this galaxy, remembered elsewhere. One final message pulsed through every system. You had your time. You buried us to protect your comfort. Now you live in the shadow of what you did. Not because we punished you, but because we let you survive it. And then silence. Real silence. Not from fear, but from completion. There was nothing left to fight for, nothing left to ask for, nothing left to take back. The humans were gone, but not erased or forgotten. They were written into everything. A century later, a new generation would rise. Children learned about humans not from lies or legends, but from truth carved into the galaxy's very foundation. Some feared them, some honored them. Some wanted to follow their path to whatever distant realm they now called home. But no one, absolutely no one, ever dared to wake them again. The galaxy had learned the hardest lesson of all. Some doors, once open, change everything. And some silences, once broken, can never be restored. The humans had given them the greatest gift possible, the chance to live with the truth of what they had done, whether they chose redemption or remained in. Their shame was no longer humanity's burden to bear.